Hello and welcome to We're Experts Now, the podcast where you could become an expert. We can't guarantee it, but we can guarantee we'll get up to some antics.
Someone might become an expert at some point, but I don't know. Our track record hasn't been great yet, so there's been a few things we've improved on.
It's all about the pursuit, And if you want to write in and tell us what you're an expert on, you want to expert-splain something to us, go right on ahead at We're Experts pod@gmail.com. Almost forgot the email address.
It's okay. We forget the name of the pod often. We're like, is this the name? Is this? Well, speaking of the name, Bex, do you want to share the exciting news?
I was going to say, this is a momentous day for us because in real time, we've just gone live and launched the podcast. We have a name and we exist. And you know what? If our name changes, that anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Anything can happen. You know what's wild that today also is? It is one of my brother's birthdays.
Oh,
so
Pisces.
I guess this is my gift to him. Happy birthday out there. Enjoying your day. I hope you like my podcast.
Wow. Beautiful. Well, it's my birthday this month as well. Okay. So I have some love for the Pisces season.
That I know. It's shared with my mom's and makes it in my life so much easier of not having to remember another specific day. So thank you. And I am excited for the Bexby Day. We usually get up to something pretty fun. But speaking of being up to things, what have you been doing lately?
Well, I had an amateur alert a couple weeks ago now, I guess 2 weeks ago, or a week ago in Seattle. And I was just reminded of traveling. It's just like the most obvious thing. You got to have cash. Got to carry cash when you're traveling. And I never carry cash. And you need it for all sorts of things. But I was particularly reminded because of the hotel staff. I never leave a tip in my room. And I'm like, I'm owning up to it. It's bad karma. It's not good. And I must find a way to remember.
That is a good one to do. I typically have cash on me, but because I never use cleaning services, and essentially when I leave, my room is clean.
Well, that's what I tell myself, but I'm like, is that enough? I just feel like this is where I'm feeling like an amateur. Like, are you supposed to do it? What's the etiquette? Does it matter where you are? Like,
It does matter where you are. So internationally, that changes, right? And so that's something I do.
Yeah, some places it's an insult, right?
Some places it's an insult. Sometimes you tip waiters, but not a masseuse, for example. And so it's really, and this is going to make me sound really whatever, but if you're in more luxury type places, regardless of what country you're in, I always tip. Like if you're in a luxury hotel or whatever you may be in that higher end, I think because those people are used to foreigners that tip, it is, I think, more acceptable to tip in those locations, and I tend to. But yeah, I Google it, but I don't know. Listeners, tell us, do you tip if you don't use the housekeeping services? Let us know. But yeah, it's the bellman, because with events, we have packages delivered to our rooms quite often. And I'm like, I have 75 packages. I actually don't like people to help me. I am so that way where I'm like, no, I'd rather do it myself. And then they always look at me and they're like, you have 22 boxes. I don't know how you're going to do this yourself. And I have to accept the help.
You don't have 22 arms, but you had the audacity to bring 22 bags.
And
they're like, that's your life journey.
No, I don't have 22 bags. I have packages that are delivered to me with event supplies. Me shaking my finger over here, wagging it at you.
Wow. Well, what is, that was just for me to learn. That was my little life lesson, I guess, this week.
It's a good one. I'm with you. I try to tip, my room, especially if I use housekeeping services, but I don't know about that one. We'll have to.
And also nail salons, I feel like they always prefer the cash tip.
They do. Yes. That is a preference. I think a lot of service industry, a lot of the time they do, because I don't think they report on all of it. Right. And so I think for them, it's, they pay less of a tax, because I'm pretty sure if you're a contractor and that type of work, a lot of them pay really high taxes. Like it's like a 40% tax.
Well, listen, I'm not here to blow up anyone's spot. I'm just saying get ahead of it. You don't want to be in the situation where you're like, I should
Yeah.
have gotten the cash. But then it's like, what do you do? Because you're going to get robbed now. You're carrying cash. It's a liability.
Okay. I just try not to get robbed.
I guess I haven't been in too many robbery situations lately, but I don't
I've
want.
never been like robbed, like walking down a street or something. Like I've had my car broken into. I've like, had my wallet stolen out of a purse at like a bar or something, right? But I have never been like stopped in the street, like give me all your money. And so
I was only threatened once, but I Tai Chi'd my way out of it.
Tai Chi is just really like a meditation slow movement, right?
And that is what I did in that moment. I used the power of hypnosis, and it was a weird situation. It was like a cartoon character duo, a very tall, skinny man in a blue tracksuit and a very short, wide man in a red tracksuit. And basically they split up. One went around the corner and one like confronted me as I was unlocking my bicycle. And I just was like, something instinctually in me was like, stand up real tall. And I just like stood up, and I was taller than him. And I was like, whatever you do not take a step an inch backwards. And just was like, hey, how's it going? And he asked me for $20, which is not an amount that you need for anything other than taking someone's money. And I was like, I just spent it all on this food, but you can have all this food if you want it. I'll go eat some ramen. And he goes, you have a really good aura, so you should just go before I change my mind. And I turned around, unlocked my bike, and biked away. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, there was another person around the corner.
The whole thing that I'm taking away from this story is that like dude is out there robbing people and is like, your aura, I'm just, I read auras, and like
it was unexpected. I was so shocked by that word choice. I was like, okay.
And that says something calming and good to me. And so as a thief, robber, whatever you want to call him, you were like, I read your aura. Good energy. Yes, sister, feel it.
He's got another calling, and I think that's what we helped each other find that day.
Yeah, you should go into that.
Okay. Well, what are we getting into this week, Jackie? Where are we headed today?
Besides like our sidetrack through the woods, as usual.
Where's our sidetrack through the woods leading us?
Well, Bex, I hope you are ready. Are you ready?
Ooh, yes.
We're going to boot camp. Oh, yeah.
No, I regret saying I was ready.
Get your sneakers and boots and your shaved head and your camo and your guns. And we're going to boot camp. We
not
are
just like
going... No, we're not getting booties and going to the mall and calling it like girl camping.
Yeah, not just like, a aerobic workout class.
We are going down to the military, our local... We're not actually going anywhere. We are theoretically
I got worried.
Going to the local military chapter, and we are going to go through boot camp, which I think is 3 to 6 months.
Wow. Even 3 seems like so much. Man, and okay, so we're talking the whole deal. So this is boot camp as a prerequisite to joining the Army.
Yeah, let's go with Army. Our guest will be someone who went into the Army. I think.
Right, but most military branches have a boot camp.
Okay, so here's the first thing that we're doing wrong is I'm pretty sure it's not called boot camp anymore. I don't remember what it's actually called, but I'm pretty sure they don't call it that. But yes, I think all boot camps are boot camp adjacent to each other.
I mean, I feel like there's an Ashton Kutcher movie where he's training to be a Coast Guard, and they have their...
No, Ashton Kutcher? Come on, they wouldn't let that guy in the military.
You should see him. He looks like Michael Phelps out there. He's a little slippery little fish in the water, and he has to save the day or whatever he has to do out there.
I love that for Ashton Kutcher. Did I say Aston? Ashton.
It's Aisling Kuchen.
Aisling,
It
good old Aisling, Eileen Kitcher.
on that show Spranked.
Ah,
Uh,
spranked. Okay, so
I
we're going to boot
I'm
camp and
just
we're not getting
imagining
spranked.
I'm imagining myself in the real scenario of going to boot camp and whoo I have some tough times thinking I don't even think I could do it. I get hung up in the philosophy of it too. I'm like I don't like authority, you know.
I kind of like authority sometimes. I don't know, like circumstances. I don't think I would like that much authority though, right? Like I think I like a little give and take. Like I have the power, then you have the power, and I'm pretty sure that's not how the military works. I'm pretty sure, like for a very long time, you never have any power, and you're just like, speaking of a slippery little fish, I think you're just trying to be a slippery little fish out there, and
Fly
like,
under the radar, swim under the radar.
no, I prefer the slippery little fish that flies under the radar. This
Yeah, I
makes
think
sense.
that's what I'm getting a little too hung up on is the whole identitylessness and the military industrial complex. But
But that's what they have to do, right? Like, so
yeah,
like
that's
you
what has the
have to
effect.
create a identity of oneness between everyone, because if people are looking out for themselves on the battlefield, then you don't have somebody who's like going back in to save their friend and pulling the weak off the field, the injured off the
Mm,
field. Like I know we don't, like, wars aren't the same way that they used to be, but I don't know. I think that there is reasoning behind why we have a military, why we have to kind of break people down. Like, I will say this, our guest has been one of my best friends for 20 something years. We were hardcore punk rock together in high school, like total degenerates. And after that, we weren't really doing much with our lives. Like, who he became after going into the military is a completely different person than who he was going into it. I think that there's negatives and cons to that, but I do really, like, I see like his responsibility, right? I see his honor. I see that when he like says that he's going to do something, he follows through, and that was not something that he was as good at before he went into the military. And so I'm with you on the, I don't always agree with how big our military is. I don't agree with everything that it does. I don't agree that we spend all our money on it in this country, but despite all of that, and despite the breaking somebody down to create a wholeness, ideologically, I think when we put that aside, boot camp's still fucking terrifying.
yeah, and that is anyone would change, and you would hope anyone would change. Period. But certainly being in the military for that long and just having that focus, there's a real trajectory there, and yeah, that's very so admirable. And hey, there, yeah, admirable.
Yeah, I think that's like the thing. Like, you are giving up so much, right? Like, when so many of these people go to serve the country, they give up, like, the niceties of home. They give up being able to see their families. Like, I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to, like, call anyone the entire time they're in boot camp. So, like,
Really? Okay, that I would like to fact check and learn about. That's a lot of deprivation.
and if it's no one, then I think it's like, because I remember I couldn't talk to him when he was in boot camp, right? This was also 10 years ago, maybe more. So maybe that's changed, but like he might have been able to call his parents, right? Like, we were friends, so maybe they were like, yeah, you only get one phone call a week or something like that, and like do with it what you will. And I'm his friend and not on the top of that totem pole, but I'm pretty sure that like you don't have access to like your family. You don't have access to, like, I don't think they have TV. Like, it's like eat, sleep, train.
Okay, so here's how I think boot camp works.
Okay.
My amateur opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You get a point of contact, whether that's someone who represents some branch of the military coming to a high school career day or something, or you just are aware of the military, obviously, as an option, and you go find whatever person, whatever office branch is in your area. And then, wow, what a contract. I guess you sign up.
Well, you get tested first. Like, they're like, you
Oh,
have to go through a
yes.
physical test. So you, like, that's why, like, so my oldest brother at one point wanted to be a pilot. He's colorblind.
Ooh, yep.
So, there are
Height,
certain things,
colorblind,
all of these things. And then there's,
blood
I'm pretty
type.
sure there's That I'm pretty
Glasses.
sure they mental ability as well. I'm pretty sure they do a psychological test.
Okay, so you go to like a testing center, probably essentially, is you're
There's
just.
multiple tests that you do. So I would imagine for efficiency, that would be a good idea to have like a testing center. Now, this is the US government, and efficiency is not always their prerogative.
Wow,
So,
shots fired.
well, like, I think that's like they have other, like, that's not their main goal, right? As the military, their main goal is to defend the country, however that is. So efficiency maybe falls to the sideline. So I think that would be great, but I imagine you probably have to go to like your own doctors, and you have to then bring that to
Mm.
them and say like, okay, I passed this, I passed that, I did my physical. I think you sign a contract. I think that they do like intellectual testing as well, because they try to identify like, oh, you're really brilliant, you would do well in radar or
Oh,
whatever it
yeah,
may
yeah.
be. Like, so I think they also
Ooh, yeah,
test
or if you're going to be a
that.
translator or a journalist or a. I guess journalist would be a totally separate
A
process.
medic, like, oh, like, well, so if
Medic.
you could be, you probably wouldn't be a
But
journalist, you'd
they.
probably be a secretary for the military in that sense.
And do those people all have to also go through the same boot camp process or training
I'm
process?
pretty sure anyone who is a military employee has to go through boot camp. But if you are a civilian who is contracted through
Mm.
the military, I don't think they have to go through boot camp. Like, there's
My
tons of
dad,
like,
my dad did that.
yeah, like there's tons of people for lots of different things that contract through the
He was
government.
in the army, but he did it much later as a video game designer for the military.
It's not surprising. Not surprising.
That's
Yeah,
part
like,
of
right.
training for some people too.
That's, well, that's
Is
flights. Yeah, flight school is now a lot of.
simulation. Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's and my brother, I'm blowing up my whole family spot. They're not in the CIA. They're regular military. My brother's in the Air Force and does that flight simulation training as well.
Yeah.
And that, oh man, and then there's degrees, I guess, associated, but that's much farther down the line, if you're
Mhm.
gonna get some kind of schooling
So,
through
okay,
the
yeah. So
military.
that's how you get there. You take your test, and then I think oftentimes you talk with different branches, I would imagine, unless like,
Hmm.
my family's a Marine family and we're going to go into the Marines. I think if you were smart, you would probably be like, like a job interview. I'm going to interview with 3 different places, see who gives me the best offer, and maybe,
Who
negotiate.
wants this flesh?
I mean, truly, I think there's all that. So you get your testing, you're approved for the military, whatever military that it is. In this scenario, let's go with Army.
Hmm.
And I imagine that they give you some time to settle everything before you go. So maybe a couple
Is this some
months.
sort of probationary period where your application is pending, or there's I wouldn't
Well, I
maybe not
imagine
a
they're
grace
not like,
period, but
you're approved, leave for the military Thursday, right? Like, I imagine they, like, you have to, if you have an apartment, you're gonna have to close up your apartment and sell and move. And
yeah.
if you're married, you're gonna have to figure out what to do with your family. So I imagine they give you some time, and then, yeah, I think first step is you go to boot camp. I I might be making this up here, but I feel like you're not actually in the military until you pass boot camp.
Hmm.
I think that's like the trial waiting period, right? Because,
Like
like,
the actual Corps, the Army Corps or whatever.
yeah, like, because I think basic training is like you're training to get in it, and then you have to pass boot camp to be an actually active military member, right?
Oh yeah, that's the
So,
other thing. There's active and I don't know, not inactive duty.
well, there's
Reserves.
retired, there's reserves,
Reserves.
there's, like, medically retired, there's a bunch of different stuff that you can be.
So you shape up, you
You
ship
ship
out,
out
and you show up.
and you show up,
And you
and you
gotta keep
try not
showing
to
up
be
for
queer. Uh,
apparently, yeah, and you gotta show up for 2 seasons, apparently, 3 to 6 months.
I'm pretty sure it's the 6 months, and so I think, okay, so I think you get there. I'm pretty sure it's very rigorous, and from like what my friend has told me, I remember him saying like you have to feed them a lot because like they're training so much and they're burning
Yeah.
thousands of calories a day, and so he was like, yeah, all you do is like train, eat, and sleep. Really, like, you're so exhausted and you wake up exhausted.
Do you also get a detail? Is that like in prison where you're like, some of you are cooks and someone's gonna do laundry?
So I think, I think basic training, all you're doing is basic training, right?
Basic
Like
training. I think that's instead of boot camp, right?
I
You
found it.
found
I
it. You
found it.
found it.
So I think, yeah, basic training is like you are learning the basics of how to be in the military. I imagine that you probably have like, you got to clean up this today and you're on the floors, right? I'm sure you have
Yeah.
chores, but
Chore chart.
can you just imagine them having like a little sorority house chore wheel? And it's like, Jeffrey, you're on floors today, girl.
I hope that's where the military is headed. It's going to really brighten up the team spirit of the
Listen,
USA.
if there was a glitter chore chart, I might consider joining the military. Now they wouldn't want me because I would not pass a single one of their tests except the intelligence one. They'd be like, "You're broken and crazy."
I think
Yeah,
I'm not going to go as far as to say today I could pass a boot camp physical training, but I'd like to think that with a few weeks to prepare myself, I could do it.
I think I could pass it the basic training. I don't
Yeah.
think I would pass the physical that they make you take.
Oh.
Like I don't think I could pass that because they would be like, I'm sorry, how many chronic illnesses do you have? Your medication alone is too expensive. Get out of here, man.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? You found your way to basic training. I think you nailed all the steps. Is there anything you feel we left out?
Well, I think it's brutal. So I think one, we have no idea what you actually do. Like I know there's exercise and there's a lot of that. And that's all I got. I do know that there is, back to your comment on is there like a, what led us to the chore chart? Is there a detail?
Yeah.
They have another training after that. So I think as you finish boot camp, I imagine they probably rank them because that sounds like something the military would do. And they're like, oh, you guys are high ranking, and you probably get to like do the thing where like it's like electives in middle school. You're like, these are my top 3,
Oh yeah.
and you try to get one of those if they have openings and if those people want, like, and I think that's probably how it goes. And then if you probably apply to be in the ones that you want to be in, and
Okay. Yeah.
if they like you.
I'm like, are there history classes? Or do you have to know
I
about
don't think
wars and
there's
stuff?
well, I think there's officer like training,
Oh,
right?
that would be officer training.
And I think most officers often already have a high degree going into the military, like if they go in at a high level, right? Like you
You can
don't
skip
sign.
grades.
No, so you can, like, you can go into the military much older, right? Like you can go in you're like mid to late 20s, early 30s, and you could have finished your like,
So old.
I mean, to join the military, that's pretty old, right? Like you kind of think of most people being like 18 to 20,
Yeah.
like very like most fittest of your life. But like some go and get their law degree first, and then they go into the military. I think some go into the
Or maybe
military.
police
Yeah, or you
officers.
go into the military, you're in the reserves. While you're in the reserves, you get a higher education, which brings you up to being an officer.
Ooh,
Like,
good point.
so
But
I think,
yeah, you would have had to pass basic training at that point. Yeah.
yes, if you were going to be in the reserves, you would have had to pass basic training. And then I think you want to be like high ranking in these classes, not classes, but the training. And then I think after that, when you're learning your job, some of those might be training and some of those might be classes. Like if you're going to be a mechanic, then you're going to go to like training, right? You're not going to be sitting in a classroom. You're going to be getting hands-on
Trade
experience.
school.
Whereas if you're doing what your like brother does, more radar, like you might be in a class trying to learn how the machine works and what the science behind that is, right? So I don't even think he does radar. He does drones, doesn't he?
Well, yeah. That's what I was gonna mention earlier. That he studied meteorology through the Air Force.
So, and that's exactly like, so he probably like did well in his training. He either like, the military either decided that he did high enough on his testing or whatever that they wanted him to go into there, or he did a lower level job, and while he was in the military also got an education which gave him the ability to go higher up.
Yeah, he entered and did he did a basic training through the Air Force, and then got his meteorology degree and made officer. And congratulations to him, he just made major. So he's
I don't know what that means, but it
I don't
sounds
really know what it means
major.
either, but yeah, I'm like, good for him.
And maybe our guest will know. So I think that's probably all of my knowledge on the
You had
boot
some decent
camp.
knowledge on that. Yes. My brother, I've always known him as major pain in the butt, but
Yeah, same with
I
mine. Mm-hmm.
I respect it. And yeah, having friends and loved ones in the military, it's makes it gives you some exposure to it. But I'm excited for us to find out more from our expert this week.
Yeah, and I think I'm really excited about it because I love the fact that I have the opinions that I do about the world and policy and how the way that things should be. I think having a very close friend who has a very different opinion all the time, like he agrees with me on social rights and a lot of that, but there are definitely things that we disagree on, and I think it has helped me learn and grow as an individual and not just jump to a conclusion because it agrees with all the other things I agree with, and really thinking, oh, well, I do value some parts of this and I do think of this differently. I do think that my respect for the military comes from knowing people who have sacrificed for it. So I'm excited. I'm excited to
Yeah.
get into this,
Oh
Bex.
my
We're going to be
goodness.
experts. We're going to
We're
be
gonna
boot
have
camp
so much
experts.
fun.
Yes. All right, let's jump in.
All right, friends, welcome back. Hope you're feeling refreshed, or maybe you just skipped right over that break. I don't know what you do with your time. That time is yours, but now you're back on the clock. All right, soldiers, and here we are all ready to hit the ground running for boot camp. We've got our friend here. Jackie, who do we have?
We actually have one of my longest friends here, my best buddy, who it's always ironic that we're going to talk about the military with him because we met as hardcore punk rock. But Carl, my long term buddy, has some military experience, so he'll march us through this. Carl, why don't you tell us about yourself?
My name's Carl Burton, and I was in the Army from 2010 to 2013. I was specifically in basic combat training at Fort Knox, Kentucky in 2010 before they shut that down as a basic training site. Did many different things in the Army. I was a mechanic, I was a clerk, I also was a certified mail handler, and I even helped the family readiness group with all the wives and how to keep in touch best with them. So I feel like I wore a lot of different hats in the military. But the most fun part of that, of course, was being a soldier, having shooting guns, getting to do all the actual fun parts of being in the military. So, yeah.
It's always been your thing. You're just a man's man, Carl. Of course, you were there for the guns and the soldiering.
Yeah, they trusted you with the artillery, so that's a
Never
big
me. Okay, I
achievement.
gotta ask how did we do? I already noticed that you said basic training, so I'm guessing that we didn't start out great. But how did Bex and I do in boot camp? Let's just call that was boot camp.
So boot camp's interesting. Honestly, that was the historical term. Everyone still uses the term, so it's really not that out of place. Pretty sure the Marine Corps still calls it boot camp. But that said, I think the Navy calls it something else, and no one really knows what the Air Force does. So, yeah.
Well, I'm
Sorry,
going to say I'm
Bex.
going to let the
Sorry to
Marine
Bex.
Corps do whatever they want to do. So that's fine in my book. And the Air Force, yeah, they're literally flying above the radar. So we're allowed to not know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. But did we do okay? What's our score? Did Bex and I pass?
So, okay. So, Jackie, I got to give you a 7 out of 10. I was disappointed that you couldn't remember the name of basic training for a very long time during the beginning of that.
I got there, though. I got there.
And Bex, you knew rank. I was really proud of you. I give you a 7 out of 10 as well. I just really I was proud. You knew a lot about it. And when push came to shove, you didn't let Jackie monopolize the knowledge there. So congratulations.
Yes. Wow. I like that. We came at it from different angles, different strengths, but I feel like our squadron is ready to go.
Squad is ready.
Squad
okay.
goals.
When
squad goal, definitely.
okay, so how does it start? Let's assume that you've accepted into the military. I know Bex and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how that might happen, but
Yeah.
let's assume that you've been accepted. Where do you what happens? What happens? Do you get a little letter like in college that says "Welcome to the military"?
Well, that's what I thought was interesting was you guys were really on the right track, but you guys were in the wrong order, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, no, but you guys very much had all the answers. So basically, it starts out with taking the ASVAB, which is a test that you take on the computer, judges your skills and how good you are at different things, whether it be mechanics, engineering, just different tasks, and that's how you figure out what jobs you're even eligible for. So, not
I
all
have
jobs are always
heard of that
available, but that's a
before. Is that stand for? I think it's like application of skills and values, or I forget. But I have heard of that as opposed to taking an SAT for your typical collegiate experience. That might be how you get into the military.
totally. It's exactly the same, and it only lasts an hour, unlike the SATs, so it's a lot
So
faster.
it's sort of the sorting hat of the armed services. To
And
put it
there's
in
definitely
Harry Potter
people,
terms.
yes, exactly. And so, um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of people who take it multiple times, just based on how they, I know people study for it as well. It just really depends on the person and how you are at test taking.
Did you
So,
study? Just a lot of silence
uh,
there. I'll take that
You
as
know
a
what? He
yes.
let the
You
test
studied
take
very
him.
hard.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not even sure I slept the night before I took that test, but yeah, that's
Mm.
yeah. Anyway, like Jackie said, we had a lot of fun when we were younger.
Well, it did. Like I've said that many times. I think I mentioned this in part one. Like you as an individual changed so much, and not that we were just the worst humans ever, but we were hardcore punk rock and just kind of doing our own thing in life, and we didn't really follow a lot of rules. So watching you go through that process and the individual you came out on the other side it was really interesting. As someone, for me, I don't have a lot of exposure to the military. You're probably my closest exposure. So I learned a lot, like just of what you do and what you grow in and how it trains you as an individual.
Yeah, and that's so surprising for me to hear that someone who, Jackie mentioned you have those roots in punk rock and bucking the establishment. So I'm curious what your experience was of this assumption that I have and maybe some other people have that that especially the army can be a very depersonalizing experience.
Totally, and I thought that was actually interesting that that was your, that was your lead-in was just, it's Jackie mentioned that it breaks you down and that it really you have to comply or just totally fall in line, and that's really not how it ends up being during basic training. I noticed you guys were arguing about how long it lasts. It actually lasts, if I remember right, I think 11 or 12 weeks. So right around 3 months.
Wow.
You have a lead-in week. You have like a 0 week or a pre-week, whatever, because you get there and they're not really ready to assign you yet. You haven't gotten uniforms. There's all those, like, you don't just show up and walk into a barracks and just
Start
lay
doing
down,
jumping
right?
jacks.
You have right. I mean, there's a
It's
lot of
like the
like
Parent Trap.
holdover stuff.
The first week of
Yeah.
school, like the first week of the Parent Trap, and all the kids are there and they're all chaos and everyone's figuring out where they're going.
No, and that's truly how it is. It's like receiving anything. It's just a bunch of people who will never see each other again. You all
Wow.
you make friends and then you never see them again. So I thought that was really interesting that you guys talked about that. But they do in some ways, to your point, they do in some ways try to break you down and make you one cohesive unit. I think the hard part is, though, as we're all human, is that you can't take personality away from people. I think certain
Yeah.
people will always be certain ways, and you can't really train that out of them. You have to figure out how that works into the system that you're designing. And that's one thing I think the military does exceedingly well is they realized that I was good with computers and doing certain things that other guys weren't. So they had me do certain things that just made sense. And I think that's one thing the military does do pretty well is just assign people to roles that make sense for their personality.
So
and
that test.
and would that happen after the basic training portion, or is that something that is happening even as early as that?
So it happens with both the testing, and then what happens is eventually you get to your unit and they have to figure out how to utilize you best. And And you know how it is. Like I remember, when I became a clerk, which is I ran the company, orderly room, or helped run it with my sergeant. The person who did filing before me didn't understand that you do AA, AB, AC as filing, and so like when I got brought up there, I had to fix a lot of filing
Oh
issues because people.
no.
It's like it's basic stuff though, right? And the guy who before me hadn't been very. He wasn't good at it or didn't care, and so I fixed it for him, and of course I did it. Ended up doing it for until I got out, and so
That
I think
became your
after a while
only
they
job.
figure out. Oh man, yeah, that's the worst. Sorry guys, that's the worst job. Like is running like the
Oh
company orderly
no.
room. Like you've got all the personnel problems, but that's not basic training
And that's
related.
files? Is
And
that just all the documents? I'm
Is
guessing.
that
yeah, like
doc?
schools, drug testing, just all the stuff that happens. And you guys were talking about going to schools, proceed to schools. That happens. You either do it right out of basic in AIT, which is your advanced training, or you do it when you get to your receiving unit, your permanent unit. They'll send people yearly, semi-annually sometimes, to go to different schools. So there's a lot to it. So
So you go to basic training, you're there for like 11 weeks. They beat the heart and soul out of you. And then you go to advanced training. Do you have to like pass something in basic training to get to go to the advanced training? Or are they just like, you made it to the end, great job, carry on?
and actually, it's true. So anymore, I remember when we got out of basic training, the standard at the time, which has since changed because I follow up on some of this stuff still because I think it's funny. Um, was basic training was you had to score 50% on your PT tests, which just wasn't that hard to do. Whereas nowadays, it's changed quite a bit. But once you get your receiving unit, you have to do 60. Otherwise, they'll put you out for being a PT failure. You have to be able to run a mile or 2 miles in 17 minutes, do
PT
like say
for
40 or
physical
50
training.
push-ups. Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Great.
So
Pushing it.
The
you don't
Army
even,
loves their acronyms.
The
they
mi-
do. And you fall into it. So
I'm going to be real. The 2 miles in 17 minutes might have been pushing it for me. And that's probably when Jackie wouldn't have made it through basic training. Like, I'm just not a runner. I'm just not.
well, that's for guys. So for females, it's I think 21 minutes or 22 minutes. It's actually not that bad. Honestly, it's one of those things that if you can't, yeah, and the push-ups and sit-ups aren't nearly that high. Those are definitely the men's numbers. But yeah, it's actually very 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 easy
Yeah,
overall
they don't
physically.
want to turn you away, I imagine.
But mark this
No,
date,
and
Carl. I'm going to say it for the first time ever. I really love sexism in this scenario. I really do. I'm really for it.
you know what though? Honestly, if you can't do the standard's so low, that's what we used to tell people. Come on, guys, if you can't do the standard, maybe you need to do something else, and or you're or you're injured, right? I mean, there's just I mean, 40 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, and a 2 mile run in 17 minutes isn't terribly challenging, and yeah, it's not meant to keep people out. So that said, though, to max it out to do like 13 mile or 13-minute 2 miles is what you need to do to get a 300. So
And that might
Question.
affect your placement. Got it.
In the
yeah,
end,
pro extra points.
when you guys have to run the mile, is it like the movies where like all your buddies are there cheering you on, trying to get you across that last little bit? It's a no. That's a no.
I don't know what movies have that scene though. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know what that image is.
I feel like it's like the Police Academy movies or something.
Oh, okay.
It's about the same as the women shaving their head when they join. That doesn't happen either.
That doesn't happen anymore?
So
No GI Janes?
no,
Okay.
no. I will. Yeah.
Okay, so we've passed with a 50 to 60% of our basic training. We are okay, but do I have to pass something to go to like a special advanced training, or does that test that I originally take determine where I'm going to go for advanced training?
So yeah, so for advanced training, like depending on what you're going to end up doing, that's really depending on what's available, and that's decided before you go to basic training. So you have that contract in writing before you leave. So you know what your job will be.
So it's not even
That's it.
like college where you can sign up for a major and then like kind of change your mind halfway through. They're like, we had 6 engineers and 20, architects available, and you get to pick one of those 2 because that's all we have room for.
Yeah. The Army's not big into change.
Okay.
And
Got it.
the Army
Wow.
is what you get, Yeah.
What
So
a commitment.
no,
Okay, well, what about the smaller things like cleaning up the mess hall or
Yeah, the
doing
chore chart.
dishes? Or is there some sort of chore chart?
So there is a short chart. I was actually laughing about your guys' sorority comment. I was like, well, when you have a board and people's names are written on it, yeah, well, it felt more like a sorority with the way everyone screamed at each other every night about the chore chart. So, yeah, it was definitely, yeah. So you have fire guard, right? You wake up 2 hours at a time a night. It's 2 guys on. So there's only 40 guys. And so some nights you really don't get a lot of sleep.
What are you
Yeah,
doing?
there's other stuff. You're just standing up, making sure the building doesn't burn down, even though you live in a brick building. It's to get you ready for being an active duty soldier. So like you get to pull guard duty, same concept. It's so like a lot of this stuff is just, it doesn't actually make sense when you're doing it. But when you look at it from a bigger perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're going to be up at night by yourself with one other person if you're pulling guard duty in Iraq or Afghanistan. They want to make sure that you get a little training in it for the first 11 or 12 weeks. And you end up doing that all the way through AIT. You pull CQ duty for 24 hours at your buildings when you're active duty. I was never reserve. I don't know what they do. It didn't make any sense. We always joked they were the guys who kept the girls out because they like wouldn't let women come to the barracks with you. So,
That's an awful job to have. Like the cock block
but
of
it
the
rotates.
military.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and hey, you know what? A couple people took a lot of pleasure in it, so it was
Oh,
definitely
I'm
kind of an
sure. I
interesting
would
time.
probably take pleasure in it too. I'm an
Misery
asshole.
loves company,
That's what they call me, misery. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but yeah, that's what it's all about. It's all about training you. That's what you don't ever have the perspective of until you get a little bit further past it, is that everything is there for a reason, even if it doesn't really make any sense. Like the hurry up and wait, that's just kind of how it is in real life, right? I mean, you're waiting around for something to happen a lot as a military member. And to your guys' point, you were talking about calories, right? And doing stuff in basic training. You do a lot of marching, DNC, right? You learn how to march and you curl your hands
I
and
don't know,
you
but
learn how
I've
to
been told that old.
right, all that stuff. And please don't use the curse ones in front of the general's house. We learned that one the hard way one time. We got in a lot of trouble in Baltimore. We were stationed in Baltimore at the time, and I think we may have said the F word in front of the general's wife,
Keep it
and it
clean,
was
boys. No, not the general's wife.
yeah, we
She's a
got in a
nice
lot
lady.
of. She was not a nice lady that day. I can tell you that. So, yeah. Anyway,
Okay,
there
so
is
you
more
learn
to it.
songs.
It's just, oh yeah, you learn a lot of songs. You don't have access to anything. You were talking about no phone calls
I was going to
during
ask that.
basic.
Yeah, can you bring your copy of You've Got Mail? Like, how do you get to watch movies or TV? Like, are you just fully no Wi-Fi, no entertainment?
Oh, I would sit in Bible study to get out of doing things, and as Jackie knows, I'm not a Bible study person. Hey, so what you realize in basic training is if you want to donate, you go to the Mormon service, and if you want, I forget what it was, the Muslim service had like I think croissants. So if you wanted croissants that day, you go to the Muslims because like you don't get a lot of extra food, and so going to religious service is actually the only way to get food during basic training. Yeah. So and Sundays are the only day that's free. We didn't make I made one phone call. You arrive, you make one phone call after you get to your unit. So you'll have your phone during like the receiving portion for that week or whatever. But no phone. You write letters. I hope you have people's addresses. Like I didn't find out the San Francisco Giants won the World Series until my grandma sent me a news clipping 3 days or 4 days after it happened.
Thanks, Grandma. Yay.
That was, yeah, right. And of course, like I'm stoked. I'm like running around, and I'm the only one who cares because I'm, of course, the only one from California there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it was just it's different. It's a different life. I mean, there is no instant contact. That said, if something happens, there's ways to get a hold of you, emergency
Wow, it
reasons.
really is like
But
old school.
yeah,
Back to you better have some good penmanship and you know, sort of flair to your words. A little bit of prosaic spin there because you're writing letters. That's what you got.
It's kind of
oh yeah,
romantic.
I know, yeah. But that also makes me think too. So you said being like the only one from California, that I kind of made me realize, yeah, this is the army. It's the whole country. You're
Yeah.
put in there with people from all over the country, just different walks of life.
it's kind of fun. Is you have people from everywhere in the country, and so you have friends who are from other places who like other sports teams, and so oftentimes Super Bowl Sundays end up becoming like almost a riot because
Yeah.
people get really into it. My last day in the Army was actually right before the Niners lost the Super Bowl in 2013. And so everyone expected me to get wild, and I was actually getting in my car and driving back to California from upstate New York at the time, and so I don't think I had more than one or two beers, and that's seriously because like I knew that I would have to drive back, but I remember it was crazy. The Baltimore kids were screaming, and there's no San Francisco kids, so they're kind of yelling in my direction. So yeah, but it is fun. It's fun. I have friends from all over the country now. I have people that I've been to Ohio to go to the NFL draft with a friend from the Army. I have a friend in Orlando who I've been in contact with. I've seen my old platoon sergeant, my captain. I ran into in Berkeley. He was actually from our hometown, Jackie, originally. He's now a major as well, like your brother, and he's stationed in Alaska. But the
And
Army's
your
what you
new
make of
buddies
it,
came to
and
your
so
wedding. Like, and they were really nice guys.
yeah.
Like, I enjoyed getting to know them. I don't think I have ever gotten a chance to meet them. And I think it's always so interesting. Like, when you know somebody from like so long, and it's like your hometown, you have this very like narrow perception of them. And then like seeing you with your military buddies, I was like, oh, you're such a bro. Like, look at you.
Oh yeah.
like, like, it's such a juxtaposition. But I feel like, and that's in the kind of what we were saying is that it trains you to be that way. Like, you guys are all like one, and it's like being together is like this
Literally in
really
the
natural
trenches
thing.
together.
Hmm.
You know, that's real fraternity.
Okay, so how did they depersonalize you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the way that they depersonalize you is like, say we're all three of us are in basic training together, and Jackie, you wake up 3 minutes late, and we didn't. Okay, total honesty here, we didn't have females at Fort Knox, which supposedly makes it easier because like the guys aren't trying to impress the women, and the women aren't trying to
Sure.
impress the guys. No, it makes it way easier. So, but apparently the problem is that Jackie's 3 minutes late, we all get punished. So what happens is guys end up beating each other up in the middle of the night sometimes. Um, and that's
So it's
pretty
a problem that
depersonalizing when
takes
not
care
only
of
not
itself.
it does pretty quickly. People, I remember one time some guy got up late and they stuck shaving cream in his shoes, so he stuck his shoes in and still had to run down there with shaving cream coming out of his shoes. It was so fun. I mean, just some of the shenanigans that you pull, but it's very much like group punishment. So if ever one person messes up, everybody messes up, and there's no faster way to dehumanize a group of people than mass punishment, right? Like if you screw up, that makes me want to make sure that you're correct, and I'll do anything in my power to make sure you're correct.
Well, and it also sounds
It's a
like
little borderline sometimes.
but it sounds like it's less like dehumanizing, which is, I think, the historical viewpoint of what boot camp was supposed to be like, and more of the emphasis and prioritization of the group over the self. Which, like, is when you say, I think when we say dehumanize and depersonalize, it sounds like oh, you're a little maggot and you don't matter. Like, I feel like from the drill sergeant movies of the 90s. And what you're saying is more of like, listen, we're acting as one. And if Jackie gets up late, you're all getting up late. That's the same thing, and you all need to learn how to do it together. I do like teamwork.
Well,
So
yeah. To me, it sounds like you're developing all sorts of soft skills, like working as a team and communicating and proactivity, and also the hard skills too. Like you got a certificate. You said you were a certified clerk, or people go there and learn degrees alongside their training. So yeah, I wonder then, like, what is life in the civilian world like post your training and post your time in the services?
Um, it really just depends. I think if you get a good skill, I think that's always been the magic part. I think you see a lot of infantrymen, It's hard because there's no transferable skills out of certain MOSs. And of course, we have the most combat arms. I mean, it's still 10 to 1, but I have friends who were, say, water pump specialists. They work in sanitary districts now and they make really good money. It's crazy to me how you can learn a skill and transfer it directly when you get out. Friends who I was mechanics with, they're diesel mechanics now, generator mechanics, guys who drive tow trucks.
So that's kind of the sweet spot, finding the right skill.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, I knew a guy who became a dental hygienist. It's a great job for him. You know, nurses. There's just so many opportunities with the Army that I think that sometimes people get caught up in. You have to be in the military, and that's its own challenge, which I think is definitely something we touched on, or you guys touched on before I got on the call with you guys. So
Yeah, like actually for me, I'm thinking now about like the beginning of it all, of why do the basic training, like what gets you there? Is it just kind of needing a direction in life, or I guess for you personally, maybe, since that would be hard to answer for everyone, of what got you into the military?
yeah, no, for me, it was definitely direction. But, you know, I mean, just with the people that I knew, I mean, you had a whole smattering of young people needed money for college. Um, there's a lot of reasons to join the military, but the problem is the military's messaging has gotten to be very poor, and they're in a very big recruiting shortage now. So I think these conversations are going to happen more and more, just because the military really needs to figure out what direction they want to go and how they want to continue to try to recruit people. Also, to go back on, they call you maggots. They do still call you mean names, but I think the big thing that you know is they can't. And this is true. They can't hit you. They can't touch you. And so, like, I mean, while a guy can get in your face and a person can scream at you, like at the end of the day, if they can't like they can get close to you, but they're not going to physically touch you. That's totally something they're not allowed to do. So, like, that level of intimidation is still there, and they can make you do push-ups until your arms fall off. No matter what they say
Make you hit
publicly,
yourself.
they'll make you do. You know, hey, I've worked out so hard. I've thrown up. So I mean, I mean, there's ways to hurt you without hurting you, right? So I mean, that's just how it is. But that said, it also, chances are you did something dumb. So you probably had it coming. I hate to be that way in these cases, but that's how it is sometimes. I was definitely a dummy. I did dumb stuffs occasionally. So. But yeah, but if you set yourself up for success in the military, there's nothing you can't do. I think a lot of people get very stuck in the idea that they want to stay in, and I think that's important too. I think we need good NCOs, but there's opportunities on both sides.
You're muted, Jackie. I was just texting you that.
I somehow pressed the space bar. What's an NCO?
I'm sorry. That's a non-commissioned officer. So an NCO is basically, you guys talked about rank earlier. You have E1s through E4s. They're non-NCOs. They're junior
I'm going to
enlisted.
need you to break all of that down.
So you got privates and you got specialists.
Okay.
E1 through E4. So privates are E1 through E3. Specialists is at E4. NCO starts at E5. You have sergeants. If someone gets snarky about how there's an E4 corporal who's an NCO, I don't count that. That's the worst rank in the Army. I hate you. Please don't ever talk to me. No, it's fine. It's for the listener who knows the rank structure.
Okay.
But E5 through E9 is basically then your NCOs, your senior enlisted, right? I mean, you got your E5s, your E6s, your E7s, E8s, and E9s, and they all control larger and larger amounts of soldiers.
Is E9 the biggest?
They'd like to think so. They're the highest.
I have wondered, like, what's the top of the chain? Is it general? Is it CEO? Is it the president?
So that's a great question. So it's probably for the enlisted guys, it's going to be an E9. There's kind of this rule that, like, you know, the officers handle officer business and the enlisted men handle enlisted business. And so the enlisted men tell the soldiers what to do. The officers more stick to the officer business. That said, they're working together all the time. It's not a slight to the officers. Please don't at me. Please don't write me angry letters. But that's just kind of how it is. The enlisted guys tell the other enlisted guys what to do, and they're working it out up top. So E9s can work from everyone from a 4-star general all the way down to a probably a battalion commander. So,
And
and
everyone goes to the
that's a
same boot
very
camp?
large part. No, officers have their own boot camp.
Ooh, fancy boot camp.
Oh.
Do they get fancy boots?
Probably. I don't know. Probably. They're an enigma.
And are these just kind of happening on like a seasonal rolling basis? So like you get your promotion to the next class, so now you're going to do that basic training at the sort of next intake period? Because I was thinking about it as like, is it like in line with school seasons or just happening all the time?
That's a great question. So it rolls. So like after like 12 weeks, they normally get. I think they gave the guys 2 weeks off. I dealt with a lot of drill sergeants once I got to my my normal unit, but I think it was 2 weeks off, and then they'd reset. Maybe it was a week. But you got to remember these drill sergeants. It's the hardest job in the Army. It's a joke that it's the worst job in the Army. They hate it.
Why?
It's so think about this. You got 3 drill sergeants. In fact, I dug something out of my closet that I hadn't seen in a very long time. So this is
And no one. Oh,
this is my basic training shirt from 2010 at Fort Drum.
I love this.
Yeah, so they let these scam artists sell you guys shirts. I think this shirt cost me $25, but it was totally worth it because like otherwise I wouldn't remember some of these names. And so I was having fun looking at it earlier. But you got to remember there's 3 drill sergeants and there was three platoons in my company, so there was 9 drill sergeants total, and 2 I think had to be on site overnight. And so there's 7 nights a week, and that's every night, no days off, no one coming to help. Better not get sick. It's rough on marriages. It's rough on life. And then the worst part is
visits. This is like
you said it, not me. But anyway, yeah, it's rough. And honestly, it's like one of those things that you don't really realize when you're doing it, but then you look back on it, you're like, these guys had to stay here 2 or 3 nights a week, each person,
no love.
Right? And not just that, like, I mean, you got kids, right? I'm sure all 3 of my guys had kids.
Well, just that everyone must hate them, like no one's befriending their drill sergeants. They're there to be the antagonists. They're there to be your mom and your dad and whatever they tell you they are.
Their daddy.
Daddy. Yeah, I guess they're daddy. They're disciplined daddy.
Okay, daddy. Okay. Question: do the drill sergeants get identified in that like ass hat test or whatever it was called?
It's not an ass hat test, Jackie.
It sounded similar. That's what I heard when he said it.
The drill sergeants are ass hats. They don't take an ass hat test. No, it's one of those extra duties. It's like, yeah, and I'm sorry. And also, none of these views are the official view of the Army, I promise. I figure I should add that in now. But anyway, no, more importantly, that's an extra duty. It's like being a recruiter. They're considered the 2 hardest jobs as being a recruiter and being a drill sergeant because of the amount of time it takes. So feel sorry for them. It's hard. And then you get guys or girls who really they're probably not cut out to be in the military. We ended up having a guy with Asperger's. They didn't figure out he had Asperger's until 2/3 of the way through basic training. And he would vapor lock and we couldn't do anything about it. Right. And it was just really interesting. We had a guy break his leg. Yeah.
Like
he just like, he would just stop and he couldn't move. Like, and you were like, go dude, we gotta go. Like we're all going to get in trouble. And it would just, sometimes he wouldn't get out of bed. It was one of those things that after a while, everyone just kind of realized there was a problem. So it's just an interesting time. You deal with a lot of interesting quirks about people. You find out a lot about people when you start spending 12 weeks straight with them. What's interesting is with my basic training class, we all went to AIT together, and I actually ended up bunking with 2 guys for the rest of the time. So I actually spent about 7 or 8 months with those guys, living with them, which was fun because they're still good friends. So.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I wasn't sure I was going to have a positive ending on that.
Yeah.
Again, Jackie. Jackie, you're muted again.
I don't know what I'm doing. But my question is, what do you do when somebody's not succeeding and they're struggling like that? You kind of touched on it a little bit. And like, do they have the right to just say, hey, this wasn't for me, I'm done, I'm out of the military, or does like they have to fail something? Like what's that process like if you're like this wasn't right, or maybe your team is saying this might not be right for you?
That's a great question. There's a couple options, and it really depends on how it's handled and how well administratively the people you are dealing with are. That should ordinarily be handled in basic training. That hasn't been the case during the surge. I'm not sure what it looks like now. So that would generally get picked up then by the line units once they got to the regular Army. And there was a lot of that. We had a guy who couldn't figure out how to bathe and do his own laundry, and it became very much a hygiene issue. Just mental health type issues that don't show up until later. We had a guy who had bipolar. He would try to hurt himself, and it showed up because he was like 21. You end up with all the really weird issues just because of the age of people that you're dealing with.
Well, and can they leave? Like, can you just say like, hey, this wasn't the right choice for me? Because you hear like going AWOL and all these different things. Like, can you leave boot camp on your own
You
volition?
gotta
And
go
like,
to the
is there
nurse. You gotta go to the Army nurse and get a letter that you're going home.
really?
I don't know. That's my hypothesis.
I Bex, now, how long do you think that letter takes to get? Because that's the only thing that you need to understand about the Army.
They're still working on the Pony Express system, huh? Telegraphs and all.
Wow.
Oh, they make the Pony Express look good. They're still on the walking it around system.
Okay, we're going to Neanderthal time period. Okay,
Smoke signals.
Jesus. That sounds like rough, because I remember someone we went to high school with, or somebody's brother at some point went AWOL from something, and like it was a really, really big deal. And I've heard of like other cases of that, and it sounds like this awful thing, but kind of with what you just said, if you aren't getting the help that you need, maybe this wasn't the case for the person we knew in high school, but if you aren't getting the help that you need, you would hope that person could walk away without, getting in trouble.
There's different types of AWOL. So when I was a clerk, I did legal aid. Anyway, so long story short, there's different types of AWOL. There's AWOL going like when you're on your R&R. So when you're back from a deployment halfway through, we had a guy go AWOL during that time period. We had a guy go AWOL right before deployment. You also have guys just randomly go AWOL. I really
Like
want
a
to say a
spring
name
break
right
guy.
now, but I can't.
No names.
I think I know the name. I think I know who it is. I just we won't name him. But yeah, I think like, because I feel like I've heard that too. Like, someone is just like, "Listen, I'm going to spring break, going to Miami. Let's get out of here." And then there sounds like there's people who, like you were saying, like mental health issues, and I hope that's possibly handled differently. It sounds like different classifications might be helpful for that.
And there is,
Mhm.
as you pointed out, there's mental and physical disability retirements, which luckily the Army is very, so they do take care of it. They are a big believer in the person that last touched it broke it. So, sorry, that's an inside joke between me and one of my friends. He was touched last by the Army, so they broke him, and so now he gets his retirement. So, but no, it's important, and the Army they do, I think, overall try to take care of people in that regard, and that's one thing you got to give them credit for.
Well, yeah, they pay for college. I've heard that the benefits for buying your first house are legit. You get whole holidays. Like, no one has a holiday for me, which I find reprehensible. I think there is like quite a bit that does lead to people wanting to join the military. I think there's also a lot of people who didn't have like a great upbringing, and they're trying to like find that way to make their life like better than what it was, either by their family circumstances, socioeconomic circumstances, access to education, whatever it may be. It's an opportunity for them to break a cycle that they may have been living in.
Yeah, and I think that's how people need to look at it. I mean, there's a lot of options, there's a lot of opportunity, and the Army isn't going to take care of you, but the Army will provide you a lot of opportunities you wouldn't have had. And I've seen a lot of guys who I was in with who have done amazing things. I mean, they're amazing people who've grown. I mean, to be way past where they were at when we met, and again, I think it's like any experience. I think it's all about what you take from it, and the Army's only as good as you're going to let it be. So it's important to remember that. It's important to remember that it's not the whole world. So
I think that's such a good point I agree with you. Like, I think you and I have talked about this extensively over the years. It's like there's good and bad in everything. And like you were saying, it's only as good as you're going to make it. And if you choose to take the most out of an experience, which I really think that you did, like, I really think the person that you came out, like, you've always been like one of my best friends. I've always thought you were awesome, but I just think that you really became like a mature, respectful adult versus just like us crazy kids growing up in, our hometown. And I don't know if I would have seen that change in you and that growth in you as an individual had you not had that experience.
Medi- mediocre life, I think. Honestly, that's what I've said. It wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been bad. But the military teaches you three things: right time, right place, right uniform, and optionally right attitude. And as long as you can do those four things, I think you can be successful at anything. And it's really not that hard to do those four things when you really boil it down. So
I think that's a great perspective. And listen, we've talked about what you can get out of this. We've talked about ways you can potentially get out of it. And before we go back and try to explain how you get into things, Jackie, do you think there's anything we missed? Any last
Well, I got to ask Carl.
reconnaissance to do?
I know you listen to us gabble on, and I'm sure there's tidbits that we might have missed on our crazy navigating you through this topic. But what do you think? Is there anything that either in the process should be known, or that Rebecca and I just horribly got wrong and needs to be corrected?
no, I think you guys pretty much nailed all of the basic stuff. I'm still ashamed of you though for not knowing basic combat training. Although
I got it eventually.
I think they've dropped the combat portion now just because marketing. And I also thought it was interesting that your dad worked on video games. I'm
Yeah.
assuming he worked on America's Army. Is that the game that he worked on?
You know what? I don't even know. Actually, I'm not sure. But yeah, I've never looked. Yeah, I've never even seen what it looks like. So I'm not sure. But apparently, video simulations are a part of how the Army's learning to do combat. So
Oh yeah. Everything's changing. Anyway, but I thought you guys were very right. And the other thing is, Jackie, you said it for me earlier. You're always hungry. I mean, you spend 11 weeks. So I mean, it's ridiculous. Like you could eat two cheeseburgers, fries, and I'm talking like real cheeseburgers, not like little McDonald's cheeseburgers, like real like quarter-pound cheeseburgers, and still be hungry and still want to eat more food. And of course, they won't let you. So that first bus ride down to Baltimore was we stopped at every rest stop and got cigarettes and ate cheeseburgers, and
You do love
it
a
was the
cheeseburger.
greatest day.
Also, like, I would like to thank the military for all that working out and the uniforms. As an admirer of
wow,
men in a
Jackie.
uniform, I just want to say thank you. I do. I want to
Yeah,
thank.
where can we get our hands on the armed services calendar? We're gonna need
Oh
that.
yeah, where do we get that, Carl?
You would not have wanted my company's armed services calendar. A bunch of mechanics do not look good in those uniforms. sorry,
Well,
guys.
probably not in basic training. They need a few years to get ripped.
Bex and I are gonna have to sum
Last
up.
ditch effort to
Oh, okay.
win back some points.
We actually did. We started
Breaking it
out pretty
down.
well this time, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty satisfied with where we started. Let's see if we can improve, though. Okay, you pass your ASMAT test.
I think you take the ASVAV. I believe it's ASVAV. I don't know. There might be another A in there hiding, but I think it's some sort of application of skills. And it's to tell you, do you understand how machinery works? Does your brain work that way? Do you understand how math works? Does your brain work that way? Do you understand reading and comprehension? It's kind of sorting you for your skill set.
I'm just gonna say yes all the way down. But,
I definitely don't understand how things work spatially.
I just want to see what happens if I say yes to everything.
I know. Maybe we should take the ASVAB just for fun, you and I, Jackie.
Okay. We'll post the results later. Okay, so you take the ASMAT, you get to basic training, and you have your week of chilling. I don't remember what it was called.
Chill. 0 week?
Pre-week? like a
Anyhow.
pre-workout, you take it and then you get
They're
pumped.
figuring out what to do with you, how to schedule you. You're getting acquainted with your barracks and your bunkmates and your
Yes.
boys.
And your boys, your barracks, your bunkmates, and the boys. That's the 3 Bs, all about life. Okay. You then get assigned, you train, you eat, you don't talk to anybody except for writing, I would like to think, really romantic love letters to your honeys
Right.
back
This
at
is
home.
where your long distance correspondence might begin if you met a nice gal before you shipped off. This is where
Because you're now on a boat. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, not actually shipped off.
Okay, and so then you finish basic training with a 17-minute mile at least, 40 push-ups and 40 sit-ups. 40 sit-ups seems light.
40 push-ups seems a lot.
Okay, well,
But
that's my guess.
if I could do girl push-ups, I could crush 40 push-ups.
Roughly 40 of push-ups and sit-ups, and then you go to your advanced training.
Yeah, because you did basic. Now you got to do
You did
advanced.
basic. Now we're advanced.
And of course, you were doing your chore chart all along. Dutifully.
Chore chart, very important.
You've got your assignment. The Army told you what you're going to do.
And you're all maggots.
And
so
you know that you're a maggot. You always have that. You know that for sure. And then maybe you get some leave time. You only got one phone call, but
you don't go AWOL. You come back.
Which, Jackie, do you know what that stands for?
Away while online?
Absent without leave. You got
Okay,
it.
I was really close.
Also, you could have a snafu. You could have a fugazi.
Wait, are these real words?
I don't know. These, I think, are military abbreviations.
See, Bex is really...
What does snafu mean?
Situation
What does snafu mean?
Normal, all fucked up.
Really?
Yeah. That defines the military right there.
I love snafu. Okay, so you don't have a snafu, you don't go AWOL, you come back from your leave. If you're a drill sergeant, it's only been 2 weeks and you barely get to go home and you don't have a wife that loves you anymore.
Oh, no.
Hey, you're not dropping anything that's not true. It's just maybe sugarcoat it a little bit better for the future drill sergeants out there.
I'm just kidding. I actually know somebody whose husband is a recruiter and they have the most beautiful relationship and the most beautiful kids. So there's always the caveat, but it is a very tough job if you are a drill sergeant or a recruiter. So props to those dudes for taking one for the
to all
team.
Army spouses and Army
And the
families.
Army.
Yeah.
The Army themselves. And the other branches of military.
Sign up now with promo code EXPERTS. Join the
Okay,
Army.
and then you get assigned to your group and you go there and you do your job.
Company. Your company. Yeah.
Okay,
Platoon.
how'd we do?
You guys did great. I give you both 10s now.
Yay! We did it.
We did it.
What a great moment. Bex, we can join boot camp now.
Rosie the Riveter, watch out.
I might be able to do the 21-minute mile. I might.
I could do that. I can run.
Just so you know, they take recruits.
I
Recruits till
mean, another thing
42.
we didn't really talk about, but the fact that it is, open to all the genders now. They're just on the don't ask, don't tell, but you can get your tail in here. We'll take your flesh.
Mm-hmm. And you said till 40.
I was 42. I was there when they repealed don't ask, don't tell. So that doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
It's all good now. So
I thought we brought it back. I thought Trump brought it back. No? Okay.
No.
Just we just use
news,
that
Jackie.
tagline.
That's fake news.
Fake
Well,
news.
that's
I'm
wonderful.
so sorry.
So, I mean, yeah, and that I'm curious to hear some more voices on that. So, but I'm so glad we got to hear from you. Tell us what messages you have, plugs, anything like that you got going on.
I've only got one plug.
Okay.
Army suicide line is now 988. So
Yes.
that's something to always remember. Yeah, they've changed it now. They've given it a 3-digit number.
Simpler.
Thought that was
That's
pretty
wonderful.
cool.
Yeah.
That is
I don't have to say 10 numbers. So yeah, so 988. If you're having problems mentally and we're in the Army, please dial 988. So
That's awesome. Thank you for plugging that. I know when we were younger, we had long conversations about the effects of suicide in the military and how it has taken quite a few lives. And yeah, let's protect the people who protect us and make sure that they have everything that they need. And yeah, Carl, like thank you so much for having this open conversation with us. And I think so many people have no idea what boot camp is like and what it's supposed to be like, and honestly, what they can get out of the military and all the positive effects. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
thank you for having me. I appreciate your guys' time.
Okay, Bex, are we experts?
Officer Jackie, we're experts now.
Aye, aye.
This has been a Just Being Better Media production.